This adventurous story begins in ancient Egypt, where a mighty king named Pharaoh ruled with absolute power. Alongside his reign, Pharaoh was deeply in love with a woman named Amun. He wished to marry her and rule the empire together. However, the problem was that Amun did not love Pharaoh at all. Instead, she was in love with a priest named Imhotep, who served in Pharaoh's kingdom. Their love grew so strong that they decided to run away together. Imhotep was not only a skilled priest but also possessed powerful magical abilities, both good and dark. He had even created a book of black magic that could bring the dead back to life, making him extremely dangerous. Soon, Pharaoh discovered Amun and Imhotep's secret love affair and decided to have them both executed. But in an attempt to save themselves, Amun and Imhotep murdered Pharaoh. However, Pharaoh's army quickly learned of this crime and began pursuing them. Realizing their inevitable capture, Amun urged Imhotep to escape. She knew that if she died, Imhotep could bring her back to life using his black magic. After much persuasion, Imhotep reluctantly agreed. As Pharaoh's soldiers arrived to capture her, Amun took her own life by stabbing herself, ensuring that Imhotep could later resurrect her. Imhotep managed to escape with Amun's body and reached his followers. Without wasting any time, he began the ritual to bring her back to life using his magical book. But before he could complete the process, Pharaoh's soldiers stormed in and captured Imhotep and his men. For his crime, Imhotep was given the most horrifying punishment of all: he was to be buried alive. The soldiers mummified him while he was still alive, wrapping his body tightly in bandages. Then, they placed him in a sarcophagus and cursed him with a deadly spell. To make his suffering even worse, they filled the sarcophagus with flesh-eating insects that would devour him for eternity. Amun's body was also buried in a similar manner. The sarcophagus was locked with an ancient mechanism that no one could open. This was done to ensure that Imhotep, with his dark magical powers, would never escape and unleash terror upon the world. That's why Imhotep's sarcophagus was buried beneath the statue of Anubis, an Egyptian god, to ensure that his powers would be contained. The people of Egypt and the soldiers who buried him had no idea that if, in the future, Imhotep's tomb was ever opened, all of Egypt would be cursed by his dark magic. Thousands of years passed. Though the ancient pyramids of Egypt were now buried under the sands, parts of them still remained visible. It was widely known that these ruins contained treasures and golden jewelry. Because of this, various armies constantly fought over the land, hoping to claim its riches. This is where we are introduced to Rick, an American soldier engaged in battle. While trying to escape, Rick found himself surrounded by enemy soldiers. In a desperate attempt to hide, he ran toward a rocky area. But as he moved forward, something strange happened. All the soldiers chasing him suddenly turned and ran away in terror. Rick was confused. He had no idea what had just happened. Then he realized that right behind him stood the statue of Anubis. Beneath the sand in that area, countless cursed spirits lurked, waiting to be awakened. Suddenly, these dark spirits rose from the ground and attacked Rick, trying to drag him down. Rick barely managed to escape, running as fast as he could. As he fled, he saw a massive face emerging from the sand, a terrifying and evil presence. Even though he escaped, he couldn't believe his eyes. He had only ever heard of such cursed spirits in myths and stories, yet now he had encountered them in real life. Years passed. Now, we are introduced to Evelyn, a woman inside an ancient library. Evelyn was an Egyptologist, an expert in ancient Egyptian history, language, and culture. She could read and speak the ancient Egyptian language fluently. She had vast knowledge about Egypt's ancient secrets and forgotten rituals. Evelyn came from a long line of explorers and traders who had spent generations uncovering Egyptian artifacts and selling them for great wealth. Her family's business revolved around collecting and dealing in ancient treasures, making her deeply familiar with Egypt's hidden history. Evelyn had a brother named John, who also collected antique artifacts. One day, John found a strange-looking key. When Evelyn carefully examined it, she discovered that the key contained an ancient map. After studying the map, Evelyn realized that it led to a legendary location in ancient Egypt, a place rumored to be filled with hidden treasures. She had also heard ancient stories about that very place, tales of none other than Imhotep and Amun. Determined to uncover the truth, Evelyn decided she had to go there as soon as possible. To get permission for the journey, Evelyn and John visited a man who controlled access to the site. However, despite repeated requests, he refused to let them go. He explained that everyone who had ever gone to that cursed place had never returned alive. But Evelyn was determined. She wanted to find out what lay hidden there, and of course, claim the treasure for herself. Curious about where John had gotten the key, Evelyn pressed him for answers. That's when John took her to a prison, where a British man had given him the key. That man was none other than Rick, the same soldier who had previously been to the ancient site and somehow survived. However, Rick was now imprisoned due to his involvement in the recent war. When Rick learned that Evelyn and John were searching for treasure, he told them that the only way he would help was if they got him out of jail, because he was the only one who had been to that cursed place and lived to tell the tale. Evelyn agreed to help, but there was a huge problem. Rick was scheduled to be executed that very day. A crowd gathered as preparations were made to hang him. Desperate to save Rick, Evelyn pleaded with the jailer and even offered him a large sum of money. However, the jailer refused and proceeded with the execution. As Rick was about to be hanged, Evelyn quickly made another offer. She told the jailer that they were going on a treasure hunt and promised him 25% of the treasure if he let Rick go. The moment the jailer heard about the fortune, he immediately changed his mind and freed Rick. Rick was overjoyed when he realized how far Evelyn had gone to save him. Now, with his freedom restored, he was ready to embark on the journey to uncover the secrets of the ancient Egyptian ruins. And in a way, Rick had started to like Evelyn. To begin their journey, they hired a boat. Rick and his companions were on board, but there were also some American treasure hunters who were heading to the same ancient site in search of riches. On the boat, Rick encountered Benny, an old acquaintance who had once fought alongside him but had betrayed him and fled during a battle. Seeing Benny again, Rick took the opportunity to get his revenge. The American treasure hunters began taunting Evelyn, telling her that she would never be able to find the treasure. This led to a rivalry between the two groups, each determined to reach the treasure first. Excitement filled the air as everyone prepared for the adventure ahead. However, their journey took a sudden and dangerous turn when a group of masked warriors attacked the ship. These warriors were the descendants of Pharaoh's royal lineage, sworn to protect his legacy. They knew the dangers of awakening Imhotep and were determined to stop anyone who carried the key to his tomb, especially Evelyn. The masked warriors stormed the ship, attacking Evelyn and her companions. In the chaos, Rick quickly stepped in to protect Evelyn. Realizing the ship was on fire, he grabbed her and jumped into the water. One by one, the survivors managed to escape the burning vessel. Eventually, Rick, Evelyn, John, and the jailer, the man she had promised 25% of the treasure, reached the shore safely. Undeterred by the attack, Evelyn led the group toward the legendary ancient site where the treasure was hidden. Thanks to her extensive research, she was able to quickly identify techniques to find the entrance to the pyramid. Once inside, the team found themselves in complete darkness. Visibility was nearly impossible. But Evelyn, using her knowledge of ancient Egyptian architecture, adjusted the direction of a mirror that was lying nearby. As sunlight hit the mirror, its reflection bounced off other strategically placed mirrors within the chamber. This simple yet effective system, used in ancient times before electricity, illuminated the pyramid's interior, revealing the long-forgotten secrets hidden within. That's why, in ancient times, people used sunlight and moonlight to illuminate these chambers. Now, staying extremely cautious, Rick, Evelyn, and John moved forward together. But soon, they ran into the American team, who had also arrived to claim the treasure first. This turned into a fierce competition, both teams racing against each other to find the hidden riches. Meanwhile, the jailer, the man Evelyn had promised 25% of the treasure, decided to separate from the group and search for the treasure alone. As he wandered deeper into a cave, he came across a wall covered with strange carvings. Believing these symbols and figures to be ancient and valuable, he began prying them off the wall. But the moment he pulled out a piece and dropped it onto the ground, a small, strange-looking insect emerged from within. The creature had been dormant for centuries, but the moment it touched the ground, it sprang to life. At the same time, the American team had hired laborers to force open a massive door, assuming that the treasure must be hidden behind it. However, the moment the door was opened, deadly gases were released, engulfing the workers. Within seconds, they were burned alive. These gases had been placed there long ago as a deadly trap to prevent intruders from entering. Meanwhile, Evelyn, John, and Rick were searching for an alternate way inside to beat the Americans to the treasure. John, while investigating the chamber, unknowingly triggered a mechanism. Suddenly, from the ground, an ancient sarcophagus began to rise. The sarcophagus had an engraving that matched the key Evelyn possessed. Both she and Rick were eager to open it to see what lay inside. However, just as they were about to do so, they heard the jailer screaming in terror. They rushed to his aid, only to discover that the tiny insects he had disturbed were now burrowing into his skin, crawling under his flesh. The jailer screamed in agony, thrashing in desperation as the creatures devoured him from the inside. Rick and Evelyn tried to save him, but it was too late. The insects had completely infested his body. In a blind panic, the jailer ran aimlessly before crashing headfirst into a stone wall. His body went limp, he was dead. A horrifying silence filled the chamber. And at that moment, they all realized, this place was far more dangerous than any of them had imagined. Evelyn, Rick, and John were terrified after witnessing all these events. So, for the time being, they decided to leave the pyramid and take some rest. They had now realized that this place was not normal. There could be even more dangerous things lurking there, which they might have to face in the future. Just then, several descendants of Pharaoh's lineage arrived at the site. These were the same people who had previously tried to attack Evelyn. Their leader was a man named Smith. Smith warned Rick and everyone present, saying, "If you value your lives, leave this place before sunrise tomorrow, or none of you will survive." After issuing this warning, Smith and his people left. However, Rick and Evelyn still couldn't understand why Smith had said such a thing. But John started explaining to them that perhaps a massive treasure was hidden here, and that was why those people wanted them to leave. Because of this, everyone became even more determined and resumed their excavation the next day. During the excavation, the American team found a mysterious box. When they opened it, they discovered the same black magic book of Imhotep inside. However, they were completely unaware of its true power. Inside the box, there were also 5 small figurines that contained the cursed organs of Anxunamun. The American team was thrilled, believing they had found something extremely unique, which could fetch them a fortune. Meanwhile, Evelyn, Rick, and John continued their research and came across a sarcophagus, none other than Imhotep's. Rick and Evelyn somehow managed to open it, revealing a mummy inside. To their shock, the mummy's body was still decomposing. Evelyn was utterly confused. This place was centuries old, and normally, a mummy's body would have completely disintegrated over such a long time. How was this one still preserved? On the sarcophagus, several inscriptions were written in the ancient Egyptian language. Evelyn, being proficient in Egyptian, carefully read them. The inscriptions warned, "If Imhotep is resurrected, a curse shall befall all of Egypt, and Imhotep, using his dark powers, will kill everyone." Evelyn was searching for an ancient book called Ammonius-Ra, a golden-colored book filled with hidden secrets. Despite extensive searching, she couldn't find the golden book. However, she discovered that the American group had found the Black Book, also known as the Book of the Dead. Determined, Evelyn immediately went to the Americans and stole the Black Book. Rick strongly warned her not to, but Evelyn, ignoring his pleas, opened the Book of the Dead. She started reading the ancient inscriptions written inside, spells capable of bringing the dead back to life. As soon as she finished reading the incantations, powerful winds began howling through the tomb. Suddenly, the mummy inside Imhotep's sarcophagus started to move. It was coming back to life. Imhotep had fully awakened, but he had not yet regained his full powers. A massive sandstorm engulfed the area as everyone ran for their lives. Meanwhile, the revived mummy of Imhotep emerged from the sarcophagus and began killing everyone in its path. Evelyn, Rick, and John managed to escape inside the pyramid. However, inside the pyramid, they encountered an even more horrifying sight: swarms of deadly scarab beetles flooding the tunnels, chasing them relentlessly. Rick fought them off and managed to get Evelyn and John to safety. In the chaos, Evelyn got separated from Rick and wandered into another chamber. Terrified, she realized she was alone. As she moved forward cautiously, she suddenly came face to face with a member of the American expedition. But when he turned to look at her, she gasped in horror. His eyes were missing. Earlier, Imhotep had seen this man and cursed him, taking his eyes. Evelyn screamed in terror, and her cries echoed through the chamber, drawing Imhotep toward her. Imhotep knew that only Evelyn had read the resurrection incantations from the Black Book, so he intended to take her with him. Just as he reached for her, Rick arrived in time and fired his shotgun, saving Evelyn from the monstrous mummy. Although Imhotep was still chasing Evelyn, Rick fired multiple shotgun blasts, weakening the mummy and forcing it to collapse. Realizing the grave mistake they had made, Rick, Evelyn, John, and the entire American team fled the tomb as fast as they could. As soon as they emerged outside, they were confronted by Pharaoh's descendants, led by Smith. Smith had warned them before to leave, but now it was too late. Their worst fear had come true. Imhotep had been resurrected, and the ancient curse had been unleashed upon the land. For generations, Smith's ancestors had protected this place to ensure Imhotep's body never returned to life. Now that he had awakened, the entire land was doomed, and one by one, everyone who had trespassed would die. Meanwhile, inside the pyramid, Rick's old acquaintance Benny had become completely lost. Soon, Imhotep's terrifying mummy appeared before him. Benny, overwhelmed with fear, began speaking in multiple languages, desperately trying to plead for his life. Eventually, he spoke in the ancient tongue of the Medjai, the mystical guardians of the tomb. Imhotep, instead of killing Benny, paused. Realizing that Benny could be useful, he spared his life and made him his servant. Back outside, Rick, having witnessed so many horrors, told Evelyn that they would leave at the first light of dawn, no matter what. But Evelyn protested, arguing that since they were responsible for Imhotep's resurrection, they couldn't just abandon Egypt to its fate. Rick, however, refused to listen. His only priority was survival. The American expedition team also realized the true extent of the danger and agreed that escaping was their best option. What none of them knew was that Imhotep's return was already affecting Egypt. A deadly plague had begun spreading across the land. Imhotep, now roaming freely, walked through the streets of Cairo, concealing his horrifying face behind a mask, with Benny loyally following him. And so, Imhotep came across the very American man whose eyes he had stolen. Although Imhotep had been resurrected, he was still weak and lacked his full powers. To regain strength, he removed his mask and absorbed the life force of the unfortunate American, draining his body completely until it was nothing but a dried husk. Now, with newly acquired power, Imhotep became even stronger. Meanwhile, Rick, Evelyn, and the others realized that a terrible plague was spreading across Egypt, and it was all Imhotep's doing. Rick rushed to warn Evelyn, but before he could reach her, molten lava began raining down from the sky, another terrifying display of Imhotep's growing strength. As chaos unfolded, Imhotep himself appeared, determined to take Evelyn. Rick fought desperately to stop him, but this time, his bullets had no effect. Imhotep had become too powerful. Just as the mummy reached for Evelyn, something unexpected happened. A cat suddenly jumped onto a piano nearby. Upon seeing the cat, Imhotep recoiled in terror and immediately turned into a cloud of dust, vanishing from sight. This ancient fear of cats was well known. Mummies were believed to be terrified of felines, and now, the same was happening to Imhotep. He fled without taking Evelyn, disappearing into the shadows. Regrouping in another chamber, Rick, Evelyn, and the others were met by Smith and an unexpected figure, the librarian who had previously warned Evelyn and John not to come here. The librarian, as it turned out, was also a descendant of Pharaoh's protectors. He revealed the harsh truth: by resurrecting Imhotep, they had made a grave mistake. Imhotep would only grow stronger with time, and soon, he would be unstoppable. Evelyn, deep in thought, came to a realization. She knew that Imhotep had been resurrected using the Black Book, also known as the Book of the Dead. If that was the case, then there had to be a way to reverse it. The answer lay in the legendary Golden Book, the Book of Ammon-Ra. By reading the spells from this sacred text, they could send Imhotep's soul back to the afterlife. They had no idea where to find it. Because the Golden Book of Ammon-Ra had the opposite effect of the Black Book of the Dead, finding it was their only chance to stop Imhotep. The librarian and Smith warned Evelyn that she needed to locate the Golden Book as soon as possible and read the spell. If she failed, Imhotep would continue to grow stronger by absorbing the life force of others and would eventually kill them all. Rick, realizing Evelyn's life was in grave danger, became even more protective of her. Not long after, Rick discovered a shocking truth: his old friend Benny had now become Imhotep's loyal servant. Determined to learn Imhotep's plans, Rick captured Benny and tortured him until he spilled everything. Benny revealed that Imhotep was planning to resurrect his lost love, Anxu-Naaman. To achieve this, he needed a human sacrifice, and that sacrifice was going to be Evelyn. Hearing this, Rick was horrified. Meanwhile, Imhotep continued to grow stronger, draining the energy of more victims. He was also searching for 5 sacred statues that contained the body parts of Anxu-Naaman, which had been cut and preserved separately. If he managed to collect all the parts, he would fully resurrect Anxu-Naaman and become even more powerful than before. One night, while Evelyn was asleep in her room, Imhotep appeared. He had come to take her away. Using his supernatural abilities, he completely hypnotized Evelyn and was about to carry her off when suddenly, Rick and his team burst into the room. Rick knew exactly how to stop Imhotep. As soon as the mummy lunged at him, Rick quickly held up a cat. Imhotep recoiled in terror, his body dissolving into dust, and vanished once again. Rick had saved Evelyn just in time. But now, they knew the final battle was near. Imhotep was dangerously close to resurrecting Anxu-Naaman, and if that happened, he would become unstoppable. Rick, Jonathan, and the others headed straight for the pyramid, determined to stop him. However, by this time, Imhotep had become so powerful that he had enslaved the entire city. Under his influence, hordes of mind-controlled Egyptians now obeyed his every command. And they were all coming to kill Rick and his team. Time was running out. Evelyn led everyone to an ancient stone where she had deciphered inscriptions revealing the location of the Golden Book. She shared this crucial information with Rick, and they all set off in a car to find it. However, their path was soon blocked by people under Imhotep's control. Before they could proceed further, Imhotep arrived with his entire army and surrounded Rick, Evelyn, John, and the others. By now, Imhotep had absorbed the life force of many people, granting him a powerful body. He gave Evelyn an ultimatum: either she willingly accompany him, or he would kill all her friends. Evelyn, realizing they had no choice, decided to go with Imhotep to buy Rick some time. She whispered to Rick, urging him to find the Golden Book and recite the spell that could defeat Imhotep. As Imhotep took Evelyn away, he deceitfully ordered his followers to kill Rick and the others. The possessed people charged toward them, forcing Rick, John, and Smith to flee. The three of them traveled across the desert, covering a great distance. Along the way, they encountered a captain who piloted a plane. Rick explained the dire situation, pleading with the captain to help save the world from destruction. After much persuasion, the captain agreed to fly them to their destination. As Rick and his team boarded the plane and headed toward their goal, Imhotep became aware of their actions. Using his dark powers, he manipulated the desert sands, creating a massive storm to engulf the plane. The aircraft was soon trapped in an enormous sandstorm, putting their mission, and their lives, at great risk. Evelyn was also present at the scene, and she would never want Rick and the others to die. To distract Imhotep, she unexpectedly kissed him, diverting his attention long enough for Rick and the others to escape using the plane. Meanwhile, Evelyn encountered Benny, who had now become Imhotep's loyal follower. She scolded him harshly, but Benny knew that if he didn't serve Imhotep, he would be killed. Imhotep had now begun raising an army of mummies, resurrecting the dead and commanding them to make him even more powerful. He also initiated the process of reviving his lover, Anxu-Naaman, which required sacrificing Evelyn. Meanwhile, Rick, John, and Smith had reached the palace of Pharaoh, where an enormous treasure lay hidden, untouched for centuries. However, their main goal was to find the Golden Book. As they ventured deeper inside, Imhotep's undead minions attacked them. Refusing to back down, the three fought fiercely, using their guns to destroy the mummies. After an intense search, Rick and John finally found the Golden Book. Without wasting time, they hurried back to save Evelyn. At the same time, Imhotep had found the key to unlock the Black Magic Book and had begun chanting dark spells, raising even more undead warriors. He was moments away from sacrificing Evelyn to bring Anxu-Naaman back to life. Everything was going according to his plan, and countless mummies were being resurrected. But just in time, Rick and his team arrived at the scene. John used the Golden Book to distract Imhotep, while Rick seized the opportunity to free Evelyn. The battle against the undead was about to reach its climax. The mummies started attacking Rick, and Evelyn urged John to start reading the spells written in the Golden Book. John knew a little Egyptian, so he began reading slowly. While Rick continued to fight the mummies, he eventually started to weaken. At one point, all the mummies attacked him simultaneously. But as soon as John finished reading the spell, all the mummies suddenly froze in place. Instead of following Imhotep, they now obeyed John because he was the one who had recited the incantations from the Golden Book. This enraged Imhotep, and he turned his fury toward John. However, before he could attack, John quickly recited another spell that put all the mummies under his control. He then commanded them to turn against Imhotep. Taking advantage of the chaos, Evelyn rushed to John's side and started reading from the Golden Book herself. Imhotep had Rick by the throat and was moments away from killing him when Evelyn recited the final spell. This caused Imhotep's soul to be pulled into the spirit world, leaving his body still intact but lifeless. Just as Imhotep's body tried to retaliate, Rick quickly stabbed him with a dagger. Imhotep's body then fell into a strange pool of liquid, where it gradually dissolved and disintegrated completely. Meanwhile, Benny had collected as much gold as he could, hoping to sell it once he escaped. However, in his greed, he accidentally triggered a hidden mechanism that caused the pyramid's walls to start closing in. Rick, John, and Evelyn barely managed to escape with their lives, but they couldn't take any treasure with them. Benny, on the other hand, was trapped in a chamber filled with deadly flesh-eating scarabs. The insects swarmed over him, consuming him entirely. As he screamed in horror, the entire pyramid began to collapse, burying everything inside. But the good news was that Rick and all his companions made it out safely. Even Smith had managed to escape unharmed. Rick and Evelyn were overjoyed, knowing that they had finally corrected the mistake they had made. And with that, our adventurous story comes to an end.